Hi everyone, we're just getting started now. So thanks everyone for coming to our first ever Mental Health Skills Night, where we'll be discussing the topic of resilience and well-being. And as most of you know, each year the Medical Society hosts Blue Week, which is part of a nationwide initiative that aims to increase mental health literacy and reduce the stigma surrounding mental health issues. This year we're hosting Blue Week in early October, but we wanted to start the conversation on mental well-being earlier in the year because it's an issue that affects us all. We hope by the end of tonight you'll have learnt skills that will help you identify problems and build resilience for not only your journey through medical school, but beyond. As you can see on the screen, we have three amazing speakers lined up, but I'd like to start off by introducing our first speaker, Professor Jill Klein. Professor Klein is an esteemed academic and an award-winning author with more than 30 years of teaching experience. Her teaching specialties are clinical decision-making, leadership, emotional intelligence, and resilience. Professor Klein's research interests include medical decision-making, junior doctor resilience in the face of medical error, and medical student well-being, with her research having been published in numerous key journals. In 2009, she joined Melbourne Business School, where she is currently a professor of marketing, and she joined us here at Melbourne Medical School in 2015, where she is a professorial fellow in medical education. Please join me in giving Professor Klein a warm welcome.
I don't think I need that. Do we have a clicker? Or should I just use this? Is this? Oh, wait.
Yep.
You need
Sorry.
to sorry.
No worries.
Okay. 1 second, gang. First, let me ask while this is getting set up. Raise your hand if you're an MD1. Oh, okay. MD2s? MD3s? MD4s? Okay. All right. So the MD1s and MD2s all saw me at induction last year and the year before. The MD4s I'm going to see in November. And the MD3s I'll see you a year from November to do an actual full resilience session. So what I do is that just before you graduate, we do a session on resilience. And the main feedback that I got from people when I started doing that a few years ago was, where were you 4 years ago? People were saying they needed that education at the beginning of the program. So now I do a resilience and growth mindset session like your second day of medical school. And that's what the first year and second year students have seen me do. That session is kind of focused on resilience around academics. And the fact that you've come from academic institutions where there was lots of variance and you've always been at the top for most of you, and now you come into an academic situation where the variance is like this, and a lot of you are still, tapping into your identity based on whether you're at the top of the distribution, which most of you won't be in. And that's a big shift, and we try and help create that recalibration early on, right away. When I talk to more senior students about that who didn't go through that session, what they tell me is they did recalibrate, they did readjust their identity around not being at the top of the class, but being like in the class and learning stuff that will help you become good doctors. But they say that they told me it took months, and they were painful months for that to happen. So part of what we're hoping to do with those sessions is to try and make things that process happen a little bit more quickly. So what I'm going to be doing today is just very quickly talking about growth versus fixed mindset. And so I know that for some of you, this is just going to be a quick review. For some of you, it will be a new experience. But I'll do it fairly quickly, but I'll also give you some links to some videos that you can watch if you want a bigger description. And then I'm going to jump into some research that I've done on how students like you think about medical error. So one of the things that can really test our resilience, one of the things that can cause a lot of psychological distress, particularly for trainees, for junior doctors, for interns, is if you're involved in the making of a medical mistake that causes patient harm, which unfortunately is something that happens you know, a fair amount, and particularly for younger doctors. And there's a growing recognition that that can cause significant psychological distress and that we should be doing more in medical school to help you prepare for that. And so we've been thinking at Melbourne Medical School, you know, what could we be doing? What sorts of interventions could we be doing to help you prepare for medical error? And one of the things I was thinking was, well, before we even ask that question, it would be good to know, what are people already thinking about medical error? Like, how much do you guys think about that? How much do you worry about that? Is it even on when you're in your first year? Is it even on your radar screen, right? When you get close to doing your internship, can some of you get overwhelmed with concern about that? You know, just where are you guys at? Because that would help us understand, when should we be talking to you about this stuff, and how should we be talking to you about this stuff? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the findings from that research. What have we seen so far in some interviews that we did with MD4 students, last year's MD4. So they've graduated already. But first, let's start with talking a little bit about growth versus fixed mindset. So if you think about statements like this, you have a certain amount of intelligence and you really can't do much to change it. Your intelligence is something about you that you can't change very much. You can learn new things, but you can't really change your basic intelligence. People who tend to agree with statements like that are sort of categorized as people who, at least for now, have a fixed mindset. Doesn't mean they're stubborn. It means that their view of intelligence and abilities tends to be that they're pretty fixed entities. You kind of have it or you don't. There's a big genetic component, you got it or you don't. And yeah, you can learn things, you can get better at things, but you know, a lot of this stuff is pretty fixed. At the opposite end of the spectrum are people with a growth mindset. So they view intelligence and abilities as extremely malleable. They change. And time, work, effort, setbacks, sometimes failures, actually helps you grow and develop abilities. Yes?
What's the correct answer?
What's the truth? Right? Okay, that's the $64 million question, right? And it's somewhere in between. When we take something like intelligence, we know that there are genetic predictors of intelligence, even when you try and control from environment, and you do twin studies and you look at twins raised separately, and you know, all of this stuff that we do to try and figure out what's environment and what's genetic. So there seems to be a heritable component to intelligence, but we also know that the brain is incredibly plastic. So of the fixed versus growth view, the answer is somewhere in between, but it's moving towards the growth end of the dimension all the time as neuroscientists really start to see how incredibly plastic even adult brains are. They're not as plastic as, our brains aren't as plastic as they were when we were 2, but they're way more plastic than neuroscientists used to think even 10, 15 years ago. And how does your brain change? It changes by learning. Just by being in med school, your brain has changed. The parts of your brain that store information about the topics that you've been using, those parts of your brain have gotten more neurons on them. They're more dense, those neurons. You have all these really well-developed neural networks that help you out when it's exam time. And your brain is different, not in its basic infrastructure, but in a lot of the neural networks that you have in the brain because of experience. We also know that practice at things makes a big difference. That yes, you know, my daughter came home once from 3rd grade and said, I'm just not a math kid, which is after a not so great math exam, right? I'm just not a math kid, right? So she was using a fixed mindset. You're either a math kid or you aren't, right? And I said to her, well, you know, Thomas, who does so well in math, you know, do you think he was born that way? Yeah. No, his mom makes him do tons of math homework. Like, he probably spends more time doing math than any of you in that class, right? So we know that people get good at the stuff that they practice. And when you discovered a weakness when you came here, maybe it was anatomy, maybe it was biochem, whatever it was, and you put more time into doing it, you may turn that weakness into a strength, or at least not a weakness anymore. So we do know that learning and experience is incredibly important. So that's sort of my answer to what's the truth behind this, right? But what's incredibly interesting is what people believe is predictive of all kinds of stuff. whether you believe these things are fixed or malleable, has a really big impact on all kinds of things. And I'll just briefly go through this, but the research shows that people who believe that intelligence and talent is static, when they encounter a mistake or they have a setback, they're likely to think this means I don't have it. So they can be very threatening. And how do you get a fixed mindset? Some of it comes from, telling kids that they're smart, that they're intelligent, that they're great at everything, everyone gets a trophy, everyone won, no one lost, and doing that, which was basically how your generation was raised. It was a bit how I was raised too. My parents were ahead of the times. But we've been doing this for quite a while. We've recognized that self-esteem is a really good thing to have, and it is. It's predictive of all kinds of great outcomes, having good self-esteem. Our mistake was thinking we could just stamp it on your forehead. Ta-da! Just tell you you're wonderful over and over again, and you'll have great self-esteem, and you'll be in great shape. And it turns out what it's taught us is adolescent depression and adults who are quite fragile to any kind of criticism or setback. Because we've kind of robbed you of the truth about your strengths and weaknesses. But also we've robbed you of opportunities to figure out how to struggle and how to improve. And what are the strategies that we use? How are you resilient in the face of a setback? Instead, we try to shield our kids from any kind of loss or setback. Right? So they haven't had much practice. So people with a growth mindset see mistakes and setbacks as opportunities for learning. Fixed mindset, they tend to avoid rather than embrace challenges, give up more easily. So a lot of times people with a fixed mindset, if something becomes too difficult or challenging, they'll just step out. They'll move back to a situation where they feel like they're on top, where they feel really comfortable, right? Some people who come to med school who are not comfortable being mediocre, none of you is mediocre. It's just you might be kind of in the middle of this curve that, within your cohort of, other amazing people, right? But some people, that feeling is so foreign to their identity, it's so threatening that they'd rather just go somewhere where they could be at the top. And I know for some of the first years, I told you this story back in February, but for the rest of you, I teach some of this stuff at the Australia Institute of Sport, where I work with coaches who coach the Olympic teams and coach the Australian international teams and things like that. And they said they didn't know this concept until I taught it to them, but they see it all the time. So if you're young and you get to go to Canberra to train, it means you're like the best in your league. You're the best. Probably, you've never been on a basketball court or a soccer field with someone as good as you. Chances are, if you get picked at 15 or 16 to go spend your summer vacation at Canberra and train there. There's amazing facilities with these amazing coaches. And what the coaches tell me is that some kids will come up with a reason after a week that they need to go back home. That they've always been the best, and now they're mediocre, or even for some of them, one of the weakest kids there. And they'd rather go home where they're the superstar. Again, because so much of their identity is based on being wonderful, combined with the belief that you either are or you aren't, as opposed to you could be in the process of. And so they leave, and they never take advantage of this great opportunity. Other kids with a more growth mindset, they're like, wow, this feels, they're not like celebrating that they're the suckiest kid in, the Canberra group. They're not like happy about that, but they see it as more of an opportunity because they think abilities can be built. They have great coaches. They're going to get to practice all day, every day for a couple of months. They're going to get to do it against people who are better than they are. Wow, that's an opportunity. I'm going to get better and better and better. Effort, with a fixed mindset, you could often think, that effort is for other people. If I have to really try at something, that's an indication that I don't have it and I don't like that. Criticism. So when your supervisor on the wards gives you some negative feedback, or your tutor supervisor, if you're a first-year student, gives you some negative feedback, with a fixed mindset, it's like, oh my God, this means I don't have it, or I don't belong here, or I'm the admissions mistake, or whatever. Or if it happens in the clinical wards, oh, this means I have good book smarts, but I'm going to be terrible when it actually comes to working with patients, right? We might tell ourselves all of those kinds of things, right? With a growth mindset, it's much more, okay, so they're identifying a weakness, what can I do to improve it? So it's all heard very, very differently. You can see, you can read the rest of the table for yourself, but this is what lots of research has shown differentiates people just based on their view of whether intelligence and abilities are fixed or malleable. It's an incredibly powerful view. And so, you know, what do we do if with the fixed versus the growth mindset? The good thing is that a fixed mindset isn't fixed, and we can all have more of a growth mindset. And even if we all have pretty much of a growth mindset, you know, we've got that pretty down, we will have fixed mindset moments. So even if we thought on that scale, oh no, I completely disagree that intelligence is fixed, when you have a setback, you may tell yourself some pretty fixed mindset stuff. So, you know, we might ask ourselves, we might sort of, when facing a challenge, what if I fail? I'll be a failure. This would have been snapped if I really had talent. I knew it was a risk. Now I've shown the world how limited I am. You know, these are sort of things we might think. For those of you in first year, if your semester 1 grades were not what you had hoped they would be, right? That's a setback. Yeah? And so you could be telling yourself, this means I'm not going to be a good doctor. This means I didn't belong here, or I shouldn't have come here, right? Those are all very fixed mindset kinds of things to tell ourselves. Right? This criticism means I thought you were capable, but now I see you're not. And so what do we do about that? So the key thing is that to get more of a growth mindset is listen for when you tell yourselves fixed mindset things. We talk ourselves through things all the time. Research on resilience shows the critical factor of resilience is, what do we say to ourselves when shit happens? You know, what's our self-talk? What are we telling ourselves? Yeah? So listen, what are you telling yourselves when you have a setback? When things go wrong, when you get some criticism? Realize that you have a choice. You can respond with a fixed mindset point of view or with a growth mindset point of view. And so when you're facing a challenge, you can think, well, what if I fail? I'll be a failure. Well, most successful people have failures along the way. I'm guessing there are very few people who get through medical school without flunking an exam somewhere, or at least, you know, having one that's kind of a disaster, having something go very pear-shaped with a patient, either medically, although usually a lot of that, you're protected from that in the early years, like when you're a second-year student and fourth-year student. But interactions with patients, or someone can get mad at you, you know, all of those things happening. You know, no one gets to medical school without that stuff happening. Let me ask, where's my third-year students? Yeah, what's a bad day? What's a setback or an adverse event in the work that you do?
It depends what you mean by that. I reckon it's more when I didn't get to see as many patients that I would have.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so you're out on the wards. You haven't started your research projects yet, or you haven't? Okay. Yeah, so you're working on the wards. You didn't get to see enough people. Okay. How about running IVs in people? How's that go?
Sucks.
It sucks. Who said that? Yeah, thank you. What sucks about it?
Because you fell in front of even unimpressed.
Yeah, so your supervisors, your fellow students, what's that?
Oh, it happens a lot.
And it happens a lot because it's hard, right? It's really hard. And so if you're telling yourself this would have been a snap if I really had talent, that probably doesn't help, right? If you said, I knew it was a risk, now I'm showing the world how limited I am. Now everyone saw I can't do this. What would be more healthy approaches to You know, that situation where you tried to put an IV in 4 times, the patient's now crying, and the nurse steps in and does it like it's no problem. Or one of your fellow students walks in and does it pretty easily, you know. What could you tell yourself about that? Not this is wonderful. This is not about putting on rose-colored glasses. It's not wonderful. It probably sucks. What could you tell yourself about it?
I speak fell
Yeah.
at some point.
Lots of people have a hard time doing this. This is a difficult, it looks easy, but it's actually a lot harder than it looks. This is something that takes a lot of practice. If you tell yourself, oh my God, this means I'm book smart, but not, you know, have no manual dexterity, you're screwed, right? I mean, wow, what a thought to try and get over. But I bet that's kind of a common thought when you have some of this stuff. I've always been good at that, so I'm not sure with the other stuff. Well, the other stuff is new, it's hard. All those of you, the first years you got this coming up, the second years you've been through this, right, and probably on your way to making the adjustment, but you know, you've learned how to learn from books and lectures and this kind of stuff, right? And next year and second year, you have to learn from walking around and watching people do stuff. And that's going to feel really unsettling. That's a tough transition. We try and help you as much as we can. We try and give you tips. We run seminars. We do all kinds of things, I think, to try and help with that transition. But some of it is you just have to figure it out yourself. How do you learn in a situation like that? You know, what do you do? So that can be very unsettling. I think when the transitions are really tough times for telling ourselves very fixed mindset things. And there are times when we really have to be consciously thinking, that was a fixed mindset thing to tell myself, that's not helpful. What's more growth mindset sort of thing that I can tell myself? And the bottom left one is awesome. 10 minutes. If you need a little growth mindset boost next time something smacks you in the face, just get out Eduardo and watch his video, and that'll be definitely uplifting for you. Okay, so thank you very much.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for any questions, but we're going to take a short break. We have pizza outside, and since we got backside, it's
But I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Come up to me while we're eating pizza. Okay, good. Perfect.
this one's always
Really okay.
One guy has a Canadian accent? Anyway.
I think it's like the lectures.
Hello. How's it going?
How are you going?
Good. you do your studies here. Yeah, yeah. What do you do?
But I never any feeling that this was just a terrible place, which is what everyone tells you.
Exactly, everyone's scared of the wrong level.
There's every time for example, how to run it's like, well, you know how they always say it's stuff like that. This is what I'm trying to convince you it's not. It's just kind of right? So we can say
Yeah, it was a system error. It was security.
So yeah, sure.
Oh yeah. Can we change the holding slide? Oh, it's my face. All right. Sure.
Oh, do you know how to send slides out?
Hi everyone, we're just going to get started again. So I'm going to introduce our second speaker for the night. Dr. Asiel Adan Sanchez is a young doctor, writer, and advocate. Their work has been featured in The Age, National Young Writers Festival, Melbourne Fringe Festival, VoiceWorks, and Archer Magazine. They enjoy writing about culture from medicine to Mexico, sexuality, race, and gender, as well as their personal struggles in the pursuit of mental well-being. As a doctor, Dr. Sanchez has seen psychiatry from the inside, seen mental health from behind the couch, seen the holes in our services and the chasms in our knowledge. They argue that mental health faces the task of reconciling the minute complex systems of genetics, neural circuits, and biochemistry with the huge phenomena of human experience, society, and its influence. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Sanchez.
Everyone, I think following on from pizza is never a good thing, but thank you for having me back. Thank you, you're here, probably really want to be here. I'd actually like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I think we often pay a lot of lip service to, acknowledgement of country without really considering a lot of the mental health impact that it has on its population. And when talking about mental health, I mean, I've had this kind of struggle since I was about 17. I had my first depressive episode when I was about that time. We had just moved in from Mexico. We felt very incredibly isolated as a family. And I remember walking to school every day. We would walk through this big road where we have gigantic monster trucks just going through. And for about 3 months straight, I couldn't quite shake the thought of walking in front of them. And at the time, I thought that was nothing but normal. That was the thing that, every single teenager went through. And it wasn't after, I gathered some friends and I spoke to a few people that I realized that that's not always the case. And this carried on through a lot of my kind of teens and early 20s. The worst depressive episode that I had actually happened just before getting into medicine, which is always, a fun thing to go through. I remember when I got the letter for my interview, I wasn't particularly excited. I was just kind of deadened inside. And I thought, oh, well, that's, a thing that I have to go through. And the morning of the interview itself, I had to talk myself up for about 2 or 3 hours, gathering the kind of will and the wherewithal to actually go through it. On the positive side, once I came out of it, it all kind of went out the window, whereas a lot of my friends kind of had this deep anxiety about how they did it. I just thought, oh well. So there's a positive in that. Later on, when I actually got my offer from the interview, and rather than actually feeling happy that I had gone through it all, I remember going home and having a good cry because some of my friends didn't get in. And they would have to go interstate, or they really tried, and what made me better than them to actually be there. And this carried on throughout a lot of my medical school itself. And it wasn't actually until I hit psychiatry and 3rd year that I was given a lot of the language to conceptualize about what mental health was. And now I grew up in a very small rural town in Mexico, kind of in the middle of nowhere. People ask, very excitedly, when they hear that I'm from Mexico, like, oh, where are you from? I went to that Mexican restaurant once. And I'm usually from like a town nobody has ever heard of or will ever hear of again. It's called Oades, and it's like 2.5 hours down south from Mexico City. And growing up in such a small rural town with very strong Catholic traditions, mental health wasn't part of our discourse. We didn't really have depression or anxiety, even though now I recognize there's quite a lot of it in my family. They just don't have the words to say it. So it wasn't until I came onto medicine that I had, the language to actually express and put a name to what I was feeling. I always called it something like existential disease, something very vague and poetic that actually didn't really help me getting anywhere. So coming to terms with that was kind of a journey within itself. And every year throughout my medical school, some reason, somewhere around like the mid-year break, that's when I allowed to kind of have myself rest. And after that, there would be some sort of depressive episode. And it took me quite a long time to build up a resilience. And first of all, naming the problem was kind of the first thing. And saying, oh, actually, well, this is a thing that I might actually need help for. Being able to reach out and actually talking about it with my friends. After finishing my med interview, I remember going to one of my closest friends who was also struggling with it at the time. And we just listened to sad music and cried, as a lot of, I suppose, more teenager people do. But we listened to a lot of Sufjan Stevens, which probably didn't help. Having that support there, just as Professor Klein said, having that one person to talk to and make the biggest difference. And for some reason, as I got through, the number of people seemed to get smaller and smaller. Everyone seemed to kind of go off in their different little, medical schools and off in their little projects. And funnily enough, in going through a lot of what Professor Klein said and a lot of the concepts around growth mindset, I was just like, oh yeah, that's actually totally me. And I recognized a lot of myself in that. And I recognized having those thoughts of just going like, no, you're just not quite good enough and you're never going to make it through. I never quite thought of giving up, but having a single thought to kind of rescue you, which in my case was always thinking of someone, a friend who had gone through it before and saying, if they can get through it, then so can I. And having someone to talk to and saying, you know, I'm struggling, have you struggled through it? And finding out ways in which we could help each other was always absolutely invaluable. And I was going to talk about some other bollocks, but given that Professor Klein just brought up a lot of the medical errors and how that impacts on mental health. And I know a lot of MD4s, perhaps MD2s and MD3s are having that kind of fresh in their mind. So I thought I would talk about one patient that kind of stuck with me. And, you know, I've been an intern for about 7 months now. It doesn't feel very long since, you know, I was on that side of it all. But, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Do I know enough? Am I good enough? Have I studied enough? You know, how am I actually going to get through it? How am I going to get through my first day? And even now, there's this one patient who sticks in my mind, someone who deteriorated very quickly, very rapidly, whom we probably could have picked up, whom we didn't really see coming, and who impacted the team quite closely. I was doing psychiatry at the time, and now when you do psychiatry, you kind of see your patients for about 30 minutes each day, and you know, you hear the progress, you hear about what they're thinking, you hear about what they're feeling, you hear about their hopes, their dreams, of where they'd like to go in the future. And this particular patient had been there for about 3 or 4 months now, and had been making a very slowly but surely getting better. And you know, from going to being very acutely mentally unwell to now starting to talk about discharge planning was such a big thing until this thing happened. And you know, for days after that, I couldn't quite get it out of my head, and I kept replaying over and over what had we done, what could have we done differently, and thinking maybe if I had done this instead of that, then this person might have picked it up then, and it would have been a lot better. But I have to say, being at the Western and being in such a good supportive environment made all the difference. And I guess this is kind of one of the ways in which you build resilience. You go through these very difficult times knowing that you are well supported and knowing that you can get through it. And thinking back on when I struggled a lot with my mood to thinking on how I am now, the big difference was that before there were times where I didn't quite think that I could get through it. Whereas now, I know that I have a big supportive team, and you know, it's not just me, there's other people around. And in this particular case, my consultant afterwards took me aside, and you know, we had a long debrief. We talked for about an hour and a half afterwards into it. I think the most difficult thing was meeting with family and having to actually face the consequences of, you know, some of our actions, and that was quite challenging. The next day after that, you know, the other co-intern and the residents kept asking me and checking on me, you know, how are you going? Like, you know, I heard this happened. It was very unexpected. How are you holding up? The social worker, you know, a lot of the allied health team. And when we talk about mental health, particularly in our kind of discourse around medicine now, is this idea of, you know, self-care, and self-care being very important, and being able to take, you know, mental health days off, which I think is also quite relevant, but it's not quite the whole picture. I think we need to talk more about how to make, you know, resilient communities. We rarely get to talk about how we can best support each other. We rarely really get to talk about what it's like walking someone through a depressive episode, what it's like to talk someone off the edge. And I think that's where some of the discourse is lacking, you know, how we can build more resilient medical communities, which will then in turn lead to this culture change, which we're all kind of hoping for. The other thing that I kind of want to raise up is that, you know, when we talk about depression, anxiety, suicide, burnout a lot, we also rarely give space to people struggling with more severe mental health disorders. You know, I have a friend who experienced psychosis on a fairly regular, you know, level. But the fact that they are very, very scared to actually come out and, you know, disclose that to any other part of the medical profession, you know, says something quite a lot about the stigma. And I remember back when I was giving a talk at the Australian Doctors' Health Conference, we had this big panel on the mental health of LGBTI people, and at the end of it, one consultant kind of raised his hand up and he was like, "Oh well, you know, when I was going through medical training, we didn't have all this talk about mental health, and there was one of my colleagues who, you know, started developing psychotic symptoms while he was training. We supported him through it, and at the end of the day, we had a doctor with schizophrenia who was out, you know, practicing, and it made me feel very uncomfortable, and it made me fear for, you know, the well-being of the patients and rah rah rah." And he posed the question, you know, where do you draw the line on that support, and how can you best support, you know, people with the more severe forms of mental illness? And I don't think we're getting particularly closer to answering that question. We're still not talking too much about psychosis and mania. And they are colleagues who will, you know, be with you, and they are colleagues who will work alongside you, and they might be colleagues that you need to support. So I guess in future, consider not only how you can build resilience for yourself, but how you can build resilience for your communities. And I think in a way that helps us strengthen all of our mental health and will lead to better outcomes. So as I'm rambling on, I think the main things to always keep in mind as you go through your medical school is that, you know, you will get through it. There are times where it feels like it doesn't. But you can always have someone, if you have someone to actually lean on and talk to and open up with, then you can move through that journey closer together. The other thing that I want to talk about that I always remember giving the medical students when I first meet them, you know, the bright-eyed kind of MD ones, were always so keen to get into the wards and, you know, learn everything there is to know. I often say my first word of advice is don't get sucked into the culture, because I think that's can be quite a damaging thing. You know, people who before medical school looked after themselves quite well and, you know, were very driven and knew exactly what they wanted to go, are suddenly hit with this kind of brick wall, and things fall apart a little bit. And you see them stressing and over things that they didn't used to stress before, being very, you know, anxious about things that they didn't used to be anxious before, struggling with their mood in places where they didn't before. So having a bit of distance and keeping in mind a little bit of perspective and knowing that you can get through will make a big difference. So I guess in summary of wrapping what I'm about to what I was talking about, I think resilience is not just kind of a one-person effort. It doesn't take just self-care and taking a lot of mental health days off. It takes a community. And I think one of the most interesting things about mental health is that we do have to kind of bring these two sides together, the big picture of society and the influence and the way we kind of communicate and work with each other, but also the very small little things, how an antidepressant, you know, can make a bit of a change. How at a small level, the way that you're thinking can completely change the way that you react and perceive things. So my advice, you know, for building resilience is work on both. Work on yourself, but also keep in mind your colleagues. Keep in mind the culture that you're working. Keep in mind, you know, how we can be more kind to each other and how we can bring about the change that we want to bring about, and how we can create a, you know, workplace in which you are well supported, in which no matter what medication error, if that comes with what adverse outcome, what terrible day you have, you know that at the end of the day, there's someone you can talk to and debrief with. So thank you. I thought I would keep it nice and short.
Okay, thanks so much, Asiel. Thanks for sharing your story and being so open and honest with us, and also for your advice as well. Just like to introduce our next speaker. This talk will be a little bit more interactive, so in the meantime, just get to know your neighbours, make friends with them, and make sure you have a pen and paper as well. Thank you. Okay, so our final speaker is Associate Professor Lindsay Oades. Everyone. Okay. Everyone, so our final speaker is Associate Professor Lindsay Oades. He's the Director at the Centre for Positive Psychology at the University of Melbourne. Thanks. He's a multi-award winning author, speaker, researcher and teacher, and he is also the coordinator for the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology here at the university. He believes that wellbeing is everyone's business. So please join me in welcoming Associate Professor Lindsay Oades. Thank you.
I've got the last slide here, so it stands between you and even closing. So I want to make sure I give you a little bit of what I believe in and a bit of insight into the journey I've been on and why I'm here tonight. I mean, originally I trained as a clinical psychologist, and I was saying to Wendy earlier on, first part of my career was in mental health and serious mental illness, so right at the end of the area we were talking about low prevalence disorders, psychiatric hospitals, that was where I started. Gradually moved through that and worked out, well, there's I've always been interested in population-based wellbeing, so big picture, how we make a systemic change. And that was why I then went and worked in stuff with workplaces, workplace wellbeing. So workplaces is a very big lever point in society to generate wellbeing. And more recently, I got asked to come down to Melbourne to head up the Centre for Positive Psychology, particularly focusing on the school sector. So working with school kids and developing programs for schools, and what I call wellbeing literacy. And I'll talk more about what I mean by wellbeing literacy in a moment. But I would like to do, if I can get this to wave, there we go. I'm just going to leave that. I'll talk a couple of purposes tonight. I want to give you an overview of positive psychology. Some of you would have heard of it, some of you may not have heard that much about it. Might have some skepticism about it, talk about that. But also the area of wellbeing science, this emergence of wellbeing science. What is it? We've already heard terms tonight. We've heard growth mindset, we've heard resilience. There are other terms such as optimism, gratitude, hope, meaning, purpose, and I could go on. Basically positive constructs, positive end of the spectrum of how we describe our experience when things are going well or if we're functioning well. So rather than talking about absence of depression or absence of anxiety or reducing stress, but in addition to talking about that, I should say, rather than what's happening when you're functioning well, what are you doing? How are you, when you're socially engaged, what are you doing? When you're feeling full purpose, full meaning, full engagement, what's going on? What predicts those things? So in many ways, the science of positive psychology is exactly that, taking a scientific lens to what's happening when things go well or people are performing well. It is not, however, a replacement or a denial of the shit things. So we're not saying the shit things don't exist, they still exist. That's why we have medicine, clinical psychology, things like that to ameliorate that. But what's happening when things go well? So rather than saying everything's okay when we get to zero, how do we get to +10? And what predicts that? What does science say about that? What does science say about well-being? What does science say about happiness, positive functioning, etc.? We haven't really had a science of that. We've usually taken our science and applied it to treat, ameliorate, fix problems, and that makes sense. It's only in prosperous societies like Australia or in history that do that. Florentine moment. So when Florence was wealthy, it's only in those times when they've actually had the luxury to ponder and work out the positive end perspective. But what I will talk about is why that's important and why that's really relevant to our current times and many of the challenges that you're not just facing as students, but importantly that your patients will face in general. So I just want to give you a bit of a walkthrough of that. So we've kind of got a dual focus. There's you as a student, and then there's you in your ongoing work. Is that all right? Okay, I'm doing all right so far? Okay. All right, one of the things we're seeing, and I'm not just talking about, we hear the term positive psychology, so that's a within discipline, that's really redressing the balance that's happened in psychology. Focus, in a lot of ways, trying to copy medicine, psychology did in the last century, treatments for anxiety, for depression, educational, fixing up things in schools, educational psychology, basically deficit based. And really that came out of the Second World War. How can we test so soldiers are okay when they go to war? So that was the real history of psychology. And that led to a big focus on the negative. It was in about the 80s and 90s when they started saying, what about the other side? What about motivation, performance, well-being, happiness, that? So that happened in psychology. But if we look across the disciplines, this well-being turn, as I call it, is happening. We're seeing it in the workplace. So we're seeing what does positive management look like. We're actually managing people really well. Public policy, we're seeing public policy around the world. 29 countries now have measures of well-being, not just measures of economics. We're seeing it in accounting, so actually our accounting systems are starting to take into account well-being. So we're seeing what I call the well-being term across a lot of the disciplines. And just in this last year, we're seeing the University of Sydney release their MOOC on positive psychiatry. So there is this general trend to actually start thinking broadly and seriously about well-being. And that's why we're also seeing this emergence of well-being science. So not just absence of illness idea, not just treatment of illness, so just in addition to treatment of illness and disease, what's happening in terms of moving towards well-being and how we do that. And that's not just an idea, it is becoming and fast becoming a science, and in psychology, one of the most published areas that we say. As soon as you start talking in this way, you will get a pushback. People will go skepticism, and you will hear things like, people can't be happy all the time, it's denying the negative, it's too American, all very nice, what about the root problems? Come down to my ward and I'll show you sick people. They're really sick, and you're here talking to me about well-being. So you will get a pushback when you talk about ideas like well-being or happiness, etc. And that's okay. We ask people to clarify their terms. It's too fluffy. We can track a disease, we can look at a cellular basis, but you're talking about happiness. What is it? Where is it? Show me it. So this sort of desire for physical proof of something's existence. So that is a challenge. And for those of you who are sociologically oriented, some people criticise the well-being movement as a neoliberal side of the individual just trying to make pleasure. So there are all sorts of criticisms and critiques that people throw at you when you start talking about well-being, or the positive end of the spectrum, or well-being as more than the absence of illness, those sorts of ideas. And that, it actually fundamentally challenges a lot of the way people think. I liken it to the rise of negative numbers. There was a time in history when 5 minus 8 made no sense. We couldn't do it. just didn't, we didn't have a system to make sense of the idea of 5 minus 8. In many ways, the way we approach wellbeing, most people still can't conceive of wellbeing as something different than just getting rid of the negative. Some people can, but when you actually listen to people's language and their words, they still have a negativity bias, which I talk about, a whole framework of thinking about things, which they can't actually conceive of wellbeing as the presence of positive attributes and not just the absence of negative attributes. And if you look at the discourse of the profession that you're involved in, it's pretty easy to find examples. And I can show you studies that look at the discourse of your discipline. And it's not that your discipline is wrong, it's that it's only part of a bigger story of human existence. And that's what we'll talk a little bit about. Any more that you want to add in terms of skepticism about wellbeing or hostile? Sure.
I know that with mindfulness, people sort of think, oh, just sitting around and being quiet, like you're not doing a lot of mindfulness and meditation.
Because you've got to achieve and produce.
Yeah.
All right, so let me put these up there because you will hear them, and that's kind of good to be armed with that. But it's also curious when you ask people what's underneath it. We'll explore that further. This is the one, I'm not sure if you've seen this one. It's not relevant to your context. You're in an area where you diagnose, find a problem, and you try and help people ameliorate it, fix it, get rid of it, cure it, prevent it, whatever. But by and large, you use a mental frame where you are looking for something and to get rid of the negative. By and large, I know there are models of positive emotion. I know that if you actually track what your industry does, by and large, you will do this, and people will struggle if there's not a problem because they have a mindset to find it. And we're sort of saying in the management area. So that's not necessarily a problem if that's what you're doing. But we're not just trying to have you as medical students who don't have depression or don't have anxiety. There's more to you than that. We want you to perform well. We want you to be motivated. We want you to have good relationships. We want you to feel content. We want presence of positive things, not just the absence of negative things. And as we heard from our previous speaker, whose name I can't remember, Asiel, he mentioned the word discourse several times. Some people don't have a discourse. They've got stress, anxiety, depression, all of these words. They literally don't have the language to talk about things when they're going well. So I challenge you to think about that in your own approach of being a medical student. Is it just about getting through, reducing stress, getting by? Even being resilient sort of implies that you must have adversity. It's a good one, but there are other ways of languaging and framing the way you approach performance, motivation, collegiality, etc. So on that note, I want to ask you exactly this, the question. I've mentioned 2 terms. I've mentioned positive psychology and secondarily wellbeing science. I want to ask you the question, what is wellbeing? So just working with a partner, we just jot down 1 sentence definition. All I'm asking is, what is wellbeing? Have a go. It's not as easy as you think. And I know it's late, but you're competent people on time, so All right, I'll give you 30 more seconds. All right, if I could pause you there, please. Guys up the back were looking pretty good. What was your definition? There's no right or wrong here. I'm just trying to track through, get a sense of how people are framing this.
To bring all ideas together,
Yep.
having the resilience so that when you are pursuing happiness and you don't achieve it, you have the growth mindset to be happy.
The multi-dimensional construct, that one. And you, over here.
So we sort of kind of had different ideas.
Yeah.
But just was more saying that like when you have good structures in place to cope, sort of like faced with hardship. So whether that be people or coping strategies or knowing who you go through what to do.
What's the opposite of coping?
Drowning.
Coping is like dealing well with a bad situation.
Yeah.
It's also dealing well with a good situation. Dealing poorly with a good situation. Dealing badly with a bad situation. So there's two types of opposites. So I'll come to that later. So down in front here.
We made more of a list, but we kind of constructed it into a sentence as a stage of emotional contentment, having a meaningful life, potential to develop, being happy, and physical and mental health. So it's a very static kind of definition.
Okay, so you've got health in there, you've got meaning, which is seen as one of the predictors of well-being. You've got contentment, which is a state. Yeah. You've got a lot.
Potential.
Okay, and potential, so growth. Okay, so let's, I'm going to ask you some further questions about your definition. Why do we focus on a definition? About the science of something, we've got to define our constructs so we measure it. And one of the reasons I get people to do this is to see actually how difficult it is to actually get to agreed definition. So first thing I'll ask, and again follows on from Asiel's comments about what level did you come in at? When I said well-being, did you think individual? There's nothing wrong with that. You are in the second most individual society in the world, following the US. So you probably assumed the individual level when I said well-being. As I said, nothing wrong with that. Just be clear about what your level of analysis is. It could have been individual, could have been diet, could have been a couple, could have been a family, could have been a team, could have been an organisation, could have been a community, could have been a state, could have been a nation, all those things. But you took individual, which is fine. Did your definition assume more pleasure and purpose? Pleasure or positive emotions? So, big distinction for philosophers bring us is the idea of hedonic well-being. So having more pleasure than pain, and satisfaction, positive emotions, red wine, sex, good art, all these sorts of things. Reduce that. That's hedonic well-being. The Aristotle's tradition of eudaimonic well-being or flourishing is more purpose, meaning, growth, virtue ethics, living life well, living a good life. That sort of broader sense of well-being. And the philosophers always want to get us to argue one or the other. When people say happy, I feel happy, we're really talking about hedonic. It's a sort of hedonic well-being. It's the one that's easier to measure. It's easier to ask you how happy you are, whether you don't then ask and explore and measure whether your life has meaning, purpose, and whether you're living in an ethical way. So, whose definition was more over into the happy, hedonic, pleasure, satisfaction? Yeah, Lindsay. Yeah. Who was more meaning, purpose, growth, virtues, true self, sort of idea? Yes. It doesn't have to be either or, but when people are talking about well-being or happiness, I challenge you to think, are they talking more in this hedonic way, or are they talking more in this eudaimonic way? Or feeling good, functioning well, doing good. Sort of different ways of framing it. Most of the articles in the Age or whatever in the popular media will be tossing around those two, and they'll usually be talking about hedonic and saying there's more to life than feeling good. That's most of the critiques will come down to that. Some people would say, who cares if you feel good if you're producing? Who cares if men go to war and they don't feel good and they get post-traumatic stress disorder because they're producing for society if they're doing something? So that's a way of overlooking well-being. So people will argue about this. These debates, they might sound very academic, but they're fundamental to our definitions of mental health and well-being. And so I'll get you to think underneath when you say someone's functioning well or they're feeling good or they're happy or they have well-being. This underpins most of what's in the DSM. What are we up to now? 5. Most of what's in that, or the ICD, there are assumptions about the very stuff I am talking about right now. Did you actually define well-being, or did you list things that you think would lead to it? Usually when you ask people what to define well-being, they'll list a set of things lead to well-being. They don't actually define well-being itself. Who did that? Anybody do that? They list stuff. You guys will list things. You guys up the back will list some things. It's not so much the list, but did you actually define what well-being as something, or did you give sets of examples of things that could lead to? General public will use give examples. Find this thing called well-being very amorphous. Who had multiple bits? Certainly at the back you had multiple parts. Who else's definition had multiple parts? Okay. So what we end up with is this thing that has these multiple bits, yet we're trying to have a science of it. And makes it very, very difficult. It's sort of quite complex. So when you say you want to have well-being or happiness, is it just one thing, or are there multiple domains? What do you got? I'm getting some puzzly faces now. Who's got multiple bits in their definition? 2? What are the 2?
Ourselves and our lives.
Okay. So we're going to have a science of this. We have to be able to define it. How do you guys say? So satisfied is benign, well-being. Yeah. People will often list what in the literature calls domains. So they'll list things like financial, social, emotional, they'll cut their lives into bits, and they'll put those words on the front of wellbeing. And they start breaking it up. Did your definition include the presence of positive things, or did it include the absence of negative things? Coping is implying that you're dealing with something negative, which is okay, but that's one particular way of doing it. Who had a definition that included the presence of a positive attribute? Yep. Okay, so most of the contemporary views of wellbeing will argue that you need to have the presence of positive attributes. World Health Organization said just after the Second World War that health was more than the absence of illness. And you go and look at a lot of our models, and it's still really defining things. We talk about mental health, and then all of a sudden we talk about illness. Let's talk about mental health, and here we are talking about depression and anxiety. Strange. Mental health, depression, anxiety. All through our discourse, we're seeing that, and it's insidious. We're doing it all the time without even knowing it. Talking about mental health promotion, and then people start talking about illness prevention. Insidious. It's in your language all of the time. So I'll come to that idea of a negativity bias in a moment, how it may impact on you and how you do it yourself. So I've talked about the hedonic and eudaimonic. So feeling good, functioning well. It's not either or. It's about doing both of those. The subjective objective one is a big one. You're in a, no doubt, getting heavily washed with scientific subjects. Some of you probably pride yourself on how good you are at science, which is a good thing. I would rather have a doctor who didn't. But it does privilege the objectives worldview. Yet when you talk to patients, they're going to tell you their experience from the subject point of view. So one of the big things when we say wellbeing, we're talking subjectively, we're talking about insight into how the person is describing their view of it, or we're talking more of a quality of life point of view where we have so many good things, like we have a good standard of living, we have good services, we have good income, more of the way the economists would define. So when I said wellbeing, who was thinking more subjectively, inside looking at my point of view? Who was thinking more objective? Not right or wrong, it's just being really clear about it. Because we could do objective medical students wellbeing, we could survey you all, check out that you're getting this. We could say medical students at University of Melbourne have high levels of wellbeing because they do this, and this, and they get all this thing, but you might get a very different result from the past. So that subjective objective distinction is really important when we come to wellbeing. Okay, who here is masculine? No one? We've got one. Who here is feminine? We've got one. And then there's the rest. Okay, one of the other big issues is this a unidimensional or is it bidimensional? So in the same way you can think of femininity and masculinity, so rather than some of you all being masculine and some of you all being feminine, you can be low feminine, high feminine, you can be low masculine, high masculine. That's all very academic, Lindsay. But if you think about wellbeing in the same way, is wellbeing the opposite of ill-being? Or can you have low levels of ill-being, high levels of ill-being, low levels of well-being, high levels of well-being? So it's important. If you have schizophrenia, can you have well-being? To do that, you need a two-dimensional model. You can have low medical symptoms, high medical symptoms. You can have low subjective wellbeing and higher subjective wellbeing. So if you, depending on whether you have a two-dimensional, one-dimensional model of this, you end up in a very different place. Who here would like to have some masculinity? Who here would like to have some femininity? Yeah, same thing. You need a two-dimensional model to do that. Same with wellbeing. If you're going to have subjective wellbeing where you feel a sense of wellbeing, but also have some medical symptoms, be they mental health related or physical health related, you need a two-dimensional model. Sounds really academic, but I challenge you to look at the models that people operate. And they usually try and pose these false opposites. Ill-being, well-being, you've got symptoms, and until you get rid of your symptoms, you can't have this. So it does kind of challenge the way you think about your work. Okay, so I want to say a bit more about negativity bias and how insidious it is, how it might creep up on you and affect the way you think and conceptualise not just other people's health and well-being, but also your own. This is just a diagram of the influence of positive psychology and well-being across the disciplines. You can see a little bit there, public health, psychiatry up the top, neuroscience is there somewhere. So it's gradually moving out, this idea of thinking about focusing on positive attributes in addition to removing negative attributes. We hear terms like focusing on people's strengths, using people's strengths, those sorts of ideas. But I must be really clear, we're not talking about denying the negative. We're talking about adding the positive lens to that. These are just examples of the rise of, I won't go into details, lots more scientific articles on wellbeing than ever before, and also politically, Britain 2011 wellbeing metrics, Brazil. So we're seeing big national rise of the focus on wellbeing. So it's not just happening for you at the individual level, it's happening across disciplines. So strategically, I recommend you start getting in tune with this because some of your curriculum may not be up to date. Some of it probably is, some of it won't be. So you usually see a 10 to 15 year lag in these trends. So some of the stuff you're being taught right now may not be up to date in terms of more contemporary approaches with wellbeing science, even though you're at University of Melbourne. So just take note of that. So one of the core concepts underpinning this is what's called negativity bias. So is anyone going out to dinner on Friday night? Or maybe a time ago? I know you had pizza. So think of your favourite meal. What's your favourite meal?
With steak.
Steak with?
Sorry.
What else?
Shrimp sauce.
Where do you eat that? Lyman Street? Or?
I'm actually going to New Zealand this weekend.
New Zealand?
Yeah, I have a visa.
Okay, so imagine that. Sounds good. Okay. Now, that guy's on your favourite meal. Is there anything you can do to fix the meal? Now that this is on your steak, can you fix it? What can you do?
You could remove them.
So, for most people, removing him would not, the meal, for most people, the meal's some people may be okay, but most people, sorry about your meal. So, Rosen and colleagues, they studied researchers in the area of disgust. We discuss what is disgusting, what leads to the emotions we've discussed. And most people say there's nothing we can do to fix the meal. If the meal didn't have enough salt, we'd add salt. If it wasn't sweet enough, we could add sugar. But once our friend operator, multiple friends and operators been through the meal, most people would say it's finished. It's done. We can't really fix it. We will reject from it because they've discussed it. So what that is, evolutionarily, we're very much built that way. We disgusted by certain things, and evolution biologists explain it why. But there are some things that run very deep. And this is partly referred to as the origin of the negativity bias. So the negativity bias is this view that we're evolutionarily programmed to pay more attention to negative things and negative events. Negative emotions, if you think about fear, anger, they're very intense. They're less frequent, but more intense than the positive emotions. So if you think about fear compared to contentment, probably who's content more than they are fearful. So more frequent, but less intense. So positive emotions are more frequent, less intense. So the negative emotions, we know their evolutionary reasons that protect us. But because of that intensity, the negativity bias is that we will pay more attention to negative events. Medical errors, very serious issue, but we pay attention a lot, and for good reason. Newspapers do it all the time. They prime us with negative events because we pay attention. Problem with this is if we insidiously take into that, we will pay more attention to negative words, we develop negative vocabularies, and it becomes hard to escape the discourse of negative events. So we build professions like medicine, deal with negative things. We have cost accountants who focus on reducing cost in accounting systems. We have lawyers who focus on reducing risk in legal systems, and I could go on. So you don't have to look very far for evidence about negativity bias. It serves us well in an evolutionary sense, but it's incomplete. Because life is more than avoiding negative. So we have linguistic systems, we have social systems which have been built around negativity bias. And the very way you may approach being a medical student could insidiously be impacted by this thing called the negativity bias. So we need to work harder at doing the positive end of the spectrum, or we get drawn back to well-being just being the absence of a negative event. The other way of talking about this or thinking about this is referred to as approach versus avoidance motivation. So, Jonathan Haidt, author of happiness hypothesis, can't quite read it, but he contrasts drowning versus making love. So, if you're drowning, are you swimming around looking at the fish going, gradually getting to the top? If you drown, what do you want to do? Get out. And you're not interested in the journey. You just want it to end. Like pain, which is just done. Escape for avoidance motivation. It's a particular type of motivation you want it finished. Making love, who's talking about it? Thinking about that, if it's good love, you do want the journey, you are interested in the process, it isn't all just make it end, it's a different motivational experience. And different brain centers, different motivational systems, they're not just opposites. moving towards a positive thing is a different motivational set than moving away from a negative thing. However, a lot of what we build and the way we talk about things is about avoidance motivations, about reducing or moving away from the negative. Part of the problem with that, though, is making this more tangible. You can set avoidance goals, you can set approach goals. Who's looking forward to a holiday, saving for a holiday, getting someone else to pay for a holiday, versus who's trying to eat less cake or eat less bad food. There's different types of motivation. And to truly understand the wellbeing piece, you have to have some approach motivation. You have to have some moving towards positive. Most of our models of mental health and wellbeing have been about getting rid of the negative, have been about avoidance motivation. The goal research tells us quite clearly that you will get longer term benefits and more sustained motivation if they're approach-based goals. So medication prescribing is, if it's done poorly, it's basically giving somebody an avoidance motivation goal. I want to get rid of my symptoms. Here's the medication. That's good if that's the sole goal, but broader-based, longer-term management plans, particularly for chronic illness, need to get framed in terms of approach. People trying to move towards something which is more than the immediate absence of illness. Not in the real acute setting, people want out, but they want away from pain. But in that longer term, the approach part becomes very important. So bring that to yourselves, rather than just avoiding anxiety or avoiding medical errors or moving away from bad things. Also have a think about what really good things you want out of the process of being a medical student. Not overall, because there are some shit things. It's both. It's don't get sucked into only avoidance motivation. Don't let the insidious negativity bias trap your language and trap your thinking. And it is insidious. It will creep up on you. And it will be reinforced by the cultures around you as well, because they've been influenced by negativity biased thinking and language as well. Does that make sense? Yep. It's fairly abstract, but you're smart enough to hang off lots of examples. If you weren't smart, I'd just give you lots of examples. Come in abstract. Okay, I want to finish by the so what can I do? So coming more to, can't quite read that, factors influencing chronic happiness. But the thing about chronic happiness, rather than chronic illness, there straight away you can see the switch. It messes with your brain if you're not, because we are so used to negatively biased language. Chronic happiness. What predicts long-term sustainable happiness? And in this case, happiness, we're talking more in the hedonic, feeling good part. Can't quite read that very well. Some of Livermersky's work, some meta-analyses on the studies that were predicting chronic happiness. Basically, what accounts for the variance? 50% genetics. Hereditary components to your happiness. Some people get really upset by this. How can you say that genetics impacts on my happiness? Well, yeah, genetics impacts on lots of things. But the 40 and 10% is interesting. This idea of 10% certain circumstances. People say, well, only 10% of my happiness is by circumstance. Studies on lottery winners. Lottery winners usually return to their base level happiness not that long after, a year or so after. studies on people with acquired disabilities, they actually return to their original levels of subjective well-being. People are sort of shocked by that. And so how can it be? And people will argue, they get a bit upset about that. The 40% is the interesting bit. That is the variance, or the between-group variance, which is malleable, which you can actually deal with from intentional activities, things that you can intentionally do to improve your happiness or your well-being. This is the interesting bit. Yes, there are social factors that impact on well-being, of course there are. But let's put in this research less, in terms of subjective well-being, less than people may think. Notice I'm not saying health. I'm not saying health, I'm not talking about disease, I'm talking about subjective well-being. That how people report, how well they're feeling, how with joy in their life, that sort of sense of things. So within that 40%, if I said to you, there's 40% of your variance of your height that you could intentionally change, you'd go, wow. Yet I've shown people this data and they go, only 40%. I can only influence 40% of my well-being, but group-based well-being can only be influenced 40%. People get upset, they feel constrained. Yet they wouldn't feel constrained if you told them about their height. So it's interesting that different people have different views on intentionality and how much they can influence their own happiness and well-being. So to finish, there are wellbeing scientists increasingly trying to tease apart these ideas, and also what can we do to intentionally improve our own wellbeing and the wellbeing of others around us, both at individual, interpersonal, family, community level. So staying at the individual level, this is Sonia Lever-Mirsky's summary of what she calls evidence-based, intentional evidence-based happiness activities. So things that we can do to improve our own well-being, for which there is some reasonable levels of scientific evidence. Not totally conclusive, but at least we're heading in the journey. So what I call the poster child of positive psychology, gratitude, both from the Christian tradition, the Buddhist tradition, derived from those wisdom traditions. The idea of being grateful, either interpersonally or transpersonally. So grateful with a beautiful mountain range, or I'm grateful with my sister having a breakfast this morning. Two different types of gratitude, very rapid antidotes to feeling good. So if you want to feel good quickly, two quick recommendations. One is gratitude. Two is do something for someone else. And that's, some of you may know that, but some actual treatments of depression are actually generosity, go and do something for someone else. But gratitude is one. Cultivating optimism, so there's a lot of research on optimism. And Jill was talking about parts of that. Not only how do we attribute bad events, so if bad things happen, how do we make sense of it? What if a good thing happens? How do you make sense of it? Is it something that you did, or did the world do it for you? So how do we talk to ourselves both when things go wrong and when things go right? Constitutes optimism. Okay, number 3. This is a good one for medical students. Medical students, high on obsessiveness, high on perfectionism, high on a whole lot of negative constructs available from traditional psychology. But you are high on perfectionism. You are high on obsessiveness. You are high IQ people, so you're prone to overthinking. That's your lot of what you bring with you. That's the shadow side to the high IQ. So overthinking is a risk factor for you. That's why things like meditation, mindfulness, distraction techniques are really powerful coping mechanisms. And social comparison. We put you in a room, we rank you, we weigh you, we compare you, and then we tell you not to socially compare. So you're in a culture where you will be prone to social comparison. Is he better than me? Is she better than me? Look up, upwards comparison, downward comparison. And Buddha said all comparison leads to suffering. So this one is particularly relevant. So the techniques that you can do to reduce overthinking are very powerful approaches, and I'm saying in your case, particularly so. Okay, other ones, acts of kindness. Number 5, the most robust predictor of well-being, quality of social relationships. We are social beings, pack animals, if you want to call us that. So we are social beings. Who's had an argument with their loved one in the last 12 months? If you want to feel shit, if you want to feel crap, go and have an argument with your loved one. It's the quickest way to feel bad. And it's intense. So they moderate. Social relationships moderate our well-being. And this is the most robust. Social support, quality of ties, all of these things. Social factors are big. If I had to pick one, if I was asked the biggest predictor of well-being, it's social relationships. Yeah, often overlooked. We go looking for some secret thing, but it's right there in front of us. It's very obvious. Strategies for dealing with negative. Learning to forgive. Who here is in psychiatry or started a psychiatry placement or started doing some folks? Look at why people seek psychotherapy. One of the big blockers is hanging on to something. The lack of the ability to forgive and then the physical effects of that. So forgiveness if you really want to move on with your well-being, there's a lot of evidence of the importance of that. So that there's 7. So I'm going to give you the book that these are in. Increasing flow experiences. Anybody here a gamer? Yeah. I can still get my sons at FIFA. So that's a good one. But flow experience is this idea of being in the zone, of being absorbed in an activity, a challenging activity that matches your skills and gives you immediate feedback. There's probably aspects of your medical training that do that. There may be other things. So these seemingly meaningless time wasters may generate well-being. That's why we're gaming, for example, there's some good well-being benefits. Because of the flow experiences that people are getting out of that. Savouring. When I asked you the opposite of coping, I was hoping you were going to say savouring. So dealing well with good events, as opposed to dealing well with bad events. So has anyone got a friend that you don't want to take on holiday because it would be the most beautiful place, but they just don't know how to have a good time? Or it's expensive. So some people can't deal with good. They might be great copers. You know, if there's a flood or a famine, you want them there. But if there's just a joyful village where everything's prosperous, you don't want them there because they're not going to deal with it. So savouring is the ability to maximise positive experiences. So actually savour. We can do that. Think of a wedding, for example, for those of you that might think that's a good thing. Anticipatory saving, we're looking forward to the wedding. The wedding itself, we're actually enjoying it, we're being in it, and then the remembrance or thinking back and remembering it. So the time dimensions of that. So savouring, you can do all of those things. And that can, so you can savour your medical exams. You can look forward to them, you can enjoy them, and then you can look back and remember them. And what the hell is he talking about? So just take the idea, go like that example, get a different one. Just think about savouring in terms of time dimensions. Have the actual idea of committing to goals. This might sound odd, but the literature shows us quite conclusively that goals, having purpose, and that sense of working towards generates well-being. So we are meant to grow and develop, and the Adan well-being clearly tells us that growth. We need to have growth. We're not static. We're not complete. We are moving, growing beings, and that movement generates well-being. I know it's a cliche about journeys and destinations, but some of the well-being research clearly bears that. Okay, practicing religion and spirituality. So a lot of the things interesting, if you look at some of these constructs, meaning, purpose, gratitude, forgiveness, they come from religious traditions. So these religious traditions have worked some of this out, pre-scientific, about the potential benefits of these. Certainly living by values. It's clear that living with a coherent value set increases our sense of well-being. And number 12 is kind of a rag bag of things, but not just standard exercise, but things like smiling and laughing as well. So there's more naturalistic things, laughing, dancing, these sorts of things that we do. They're not some special technique, they're just about clearing space in your life to actually do it. That's pretty obvious, but you wouldn't know yourselves how difficult it is to get through exercise. So it's that issue about how to do it. So if you're interested in those, they're all listed in the How of Happiness, some of the Mercy's book that's in pretty much every bookstore. It's a good book because it gives the practical tips, but it also points to the evidence-based formula. There's another URL there for a set of broader site tools. So in summary, all I've tried to do two things: give you a bit of an overview of what is positive psychology, introduce you to wellbeing science, get you to think about the negativity bias and how insidious it is in your language and in the systems and cultures in which you operate. It's not going to go away, but with a bit of work, you can consciously think about doing things what they look like through a positive lens, not replacing, but in addition to the survival lens. And I really wanted to think about it both in terms of your life as a student, and savouring your life as a student, but also that serious, harder look at things like two-dimensional models of well-being, really thinking through that as you receive what's the messages about what is health, what is well-being, what is mental health. Challenge it, prepare to challenge it. So challenge some of the models or discourses that are being given that are often imprinted with negativity bias, and look out for it. Because as soon as you see it, it's like, wow, I didn't realise it was so pervasive in our language and our food. So, on that note, I really wish you well with the savouring your medical journey and the important work that you continue to do. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Lindsay, for that wonderful speech. On the subject of gratitude, just want to really thank the three amazing speakers today. Professor Jill Klein, Dr. Asiel, Adan Sanchez, and Associate Professor Lindsay Oades. Just thank you so much for being so generous with your time and for sharing your life and your story and your work with all of us. Thank you. Just a round of applause. And we've got some sponsors. Also, thank you team, Meg, Nat, just so incredible amazing to work with. I know we're Wellbeing, but like just so supportive as well. Siobhan, amazing as always. Thank you for bringing the entire ARMS committee. ARMS, thank you. And also thank you for UMSU for sponsoring this event as well. Yeah, hope everyone has a great night. Thank you for coming.